So, apologies for this strange and messy backdrop with the light right behind me. I know. It's just that I thought it'd be good to have something to differentiate this bit of footage from what you're about to see. At the end of my last video, which was a spooky TBR for the summer, I just threw in this book that I'd already read earlier in the year, Everything Under by Daisy Johnson, because it's kind of spooky and kind of summer themed, and I hadn't really talked about it on this channel, so I thought, why not go for it? Like a little DVD extra, something for the fans, you know? And then, of course, I rambled on until that little section was longer, actually, than the whole list of TBR books itself. I thought, you know what, I'll just cut it off and make it its own review, and here we are. So hopefully with that little bit of framing, if I mention the TBR list in the video or whatever, now everything should make sense. I'll hand you over to last week's Seb now. You will see me again once, I think, in this video, so eyes peeled for that. You know what? This book, Everything Under by Daisy Johnson, isn't a book that's on my TBR. I read it quite a while ago now, but I still haven't. I actually really need to return it to the library. But I think I just want to talk about it for a moment because it's also kind of literary, but like with a lot of horror themes. It's almost horror. It kind of goes straight into horror in lots of places. And it's also kind of a sweltering, summery English book. It's about this woman, Gretel, who is 30 or in her 30s, around there. She was abandoned by her mother when she was a child, and she's been kind of looking for her low-key all her life, and now she's finally found her mother and they're living together. There's several strands to this story. Like there's different timelines with different titles. Like one is called The Cottage. And whenever we get a section titled The Cottage, we know, okay, this is the timeline where it's Gretel and her mom living together in the present day, I suppose. And then we have another, you know what I mean? And so like, it's like chapter titles, but they're interspersed all the way through. Kind of a clever idea, I think. But on audiobook, it's a chore. I had no idea what was going on. It was just like kind of a blur of timelines and characters. I could not follow at all. Maybe it was just me at the time. I don't know. But I gave up the audiobook really fast and got the physical one instead. There's this one paragraph which has its own page. And I think when the book came out in around 2018, this is what I read that made me think I definitely want to read this someday. So I'll read it to you now. It's a whole paragraph, but let's go. Why not? The places we are born come back. They disguise themselves as migraines, stomach aches, insomnia. They are the way we sometimes wake falling, fumbling for the bedside lamp, certain everything we've built has gone in the night. We become strangers to the places we are born. They would not recognize us, but we will always recognize them. They are marrow to us. They are bred into us. If we were turned inside out, there would be maps cut into the wrong side of our skin, just so we could find our way back. Except cut wrong side into my skin are not canals and train tracks and a boat, but always you. How good is that, right? Like, it really made me want to read this book. And this year I finally did. And honestly, I feel cheated. I feel like this paragraph is the best thing in the whole book. It's not that the rest of the book is like in a different style or anything like that. It's just that this paragraph is a promise, right? I feel like it's a promise of something to come. And the thing that comes just really doesn't deliver. I would have rather read a whole book of paragraphs like this, just promising some strange story to come, and never actually gotten a story, than the story we got in this book. First of all, about the setting, this is one of the first things that turned me off. Like, they go through the different seasons in the book, but it seems to be a hotter climate than England is. She often mentions air conditioning, for example. Like, that's all she says, like the air conditioning unit was making a rattling noise or something like that. And there's no air conditioning in general in the UK, right? So it made me think, like, are we in some sort of parallel universe where the UK is hotter, or is this like in the near future where, you know, climate change has made the UK hotter? I don't know. And like, I kind of like that idea that we don't really know if this is an alternate, a slightly warmer UK or what's going on. But then there were other things, like she mentioned seeing frog spawn in August, and it was right in the middle of a paragraph, so you could easily have missed it. But it just made me think, what? Frog spawn in August? Like that doesn't happen, right? Like, why would a slightly warmer climate as well mean that frogs start breeding in August? It didn't make any sense, right? And it's the kind of like detail as well that if you don't really know much about frogs, it'd be easy to miss and to overlook. I was kind of holding out that it would lead to something, like it would build up to not necessarily a revelation, but just a greater understanding about what the setting actually is. but we never get anything more than that. And because it's so minimal, I felt it just looked like errors a lot of the times. Like, it made me think that maybe this is written by someone who doesn't know much about when frogs breed, which I imagine, you know, giving Daisy Johnson the benefit of the doubt and the fact that she writes about like nature quite a lot in the book, I imagine it's not the case. But still, there were so few of those little strange things that made the climate feel a bit off that they didn't really work. It didn't feel like a well planned out, consistent kind of setting. It just felt like little moments where you go, huh, what? And I don't know, the way I'm describing it now, it doesn't sound so bad, but it did bother me when I was reading it. Maybe it was because there wasn't much else that caught my interest. Like, as Gretel starts to try and discover what happened to her mother, she also has to find out about this person called Marcus. And it becomes clear that there's a whole story around Marcus, which is going to be the main story of this book. And basically, early on, we are told that it's a retelling of the Oedipus myth. Like, they don't say it directly, this is a retelling of the Oedipus myth. But, you know, it's, for anyone who knows a little bit about that myth, it's very obvious. And for people who don't know about that myth at all, at least we can understand like the main bits of the story. Like, very early on, Marcus is thinking something like, oh, what Fiona told me I was gonna do to my father and what I was gonna do to my mother. And then like it's implied that it's a sort of sexual thing that would be done to the mother. And the reason why this is important is because as we go on through the different strands, one of the main ones is Gretel's sort of detective strand, finding out what happened to Marcus and therefore, you know, by proxy, what happened to my mother. Because they're all intertwined in a sort of familial way, right? The tension is building up on plot reveal information. Like, we end a chapter saying like, you know, Fiona sat down with her fish and chips, looked at me and began to tell her story. But we know her story because we've already read it in a previous strand like 5 chapters ago. Do you know what I mean? So you can't use disclosure of information as a way to build up tension when we already know what that information is. Especially because a lot of people know the Oedipus myth already. We already know exactly more or less how the story is going to go. But even for people who don't, I'm pretty confident that that disclosure of information just doesn't work because of the way this book is structured. So yeah, as a Greek myth retelling, definitely not my favorite. The sad thing here is that it feels like at its core, this is a story about a girl who was abandoned by her mother and then, you know, reconnects with that mother and is feeling this sort of grief, even though the person is there in front of them. And that feeling of having a parent there where you can communicate with them, but you can't really, you know, get from them what you want from them, you know, or what you need from them, or what you feel like they owe you or something like that. That kind of dissatisfaction is, I guess, universal to some level or other, or like, you know, more or less with different people. But I think it taps into something universal. And I feel like Daisy Johnson like had this core of a story and an emotion about, you know, a child and a parent and not being able to connect over feelings of abandonment and stuff. And you can see that kind of in the first paragraph that I read to you. Hey, it's me again. So what happened there was that the phone ran out of battery, and then when I started talking again, I'd lost the thread of what I was getting at. But I think it was kind of important, at least for me. I think it like is an important thing that I wanted to say about the book, which I still have here. I really need to get this back to the library. But yeah, the Greek myth aspect felt to me like kind of filler, but like for the whole novel. Do you know what I mean? Like, the main heart of this book, the core, the emotional core, was a story about a daughter and a mother, and like kind of the child-parent relationship. And you'd think that might really fit with the story, the myth of Oedipus, but I felt that they didn't really gel at any point. The character playing the role of Oedipus is not Gretel, and the overlapping characters are not really explored, I think, in a way which makes sense with the myth, at least not for me. So I kind of felt like the myth was just used as a skeleton to hold up an idea which really should have been a short story and would have made maybe a really good short story, but to like kind of stretch it out into a novel, there needed to be something else. And so that's where we got the Greek myth retelling from. So yeah, I feel like there was like 2 separate elements, the heart of the novel and then the Greek myth bit of the novel, which is like basically everything. It's the plot for the emotions to hang off of, right? I wish that Daisy Johnson had found some other way to either explore that idea that she had about a parent and a child without bringing in the Greek myth retelling, or else somehow glued the Greek myth to her idea in a much more sturdy and convincing way. Other things that bothered me, there were other things like the frog spawn, which felt like they could have been important for the story, but were just not thought about or remarked upon. And I don't know if they were originally an idea that just got dropped, or if they're meant to be like super subtle. Like, for example, she steals a dog. The main character, Gretel, just steals a dog at the beginning. She doesn't like go into somebody's house and steal it, but like she finds it and she knows that there's an owner who's looking for it, and she keeps the dog with her, but then she just keeps the dog for the rest of the book. For me, this seemed like you could have an opportunity to show something about Gretel's character. We could have at any point like have had a line of Gretel saying, I wonder if that owner is still looking for their dog, or something like that. Anything to remind us about the owner, or even if Gretel doesn't think about it, the reader could be reminded in some way. But no, like we just focus on Gretel's relationship with the dog, and I kind of feel like we're meant to think it's okay. And maybe we're not, but like there's no prompts to think otherwise. All the prompts are for us to think that this is like a healthy relationship, her and the dog. So I don't know really what's going on there. Like, it doesn't matter what Gretel thinks so much as, does the author want me to notice that she stole the dog, or does she just want me to kind of forget about it or not even realize that she really stole it, right? Do we just forget about the dog's original owner? I don't know, but it bothered me, and I felt like, how am I supposed to empathize with this dog thief when her crime is going unacknowledged throughout the whole book? The gender stuff was also a bit sketch in this. There's one character who's trans who I think it's fine and just done well. It's, you know, there's nothing more to say on that. It's not super good, it's not super bad, but it fits very nicely with the Greek myth. But there's another character who's trans, and it felt like, what is the point of this? What is the point of introducing this transness into the story? Feels like it's going to lead to something, maybe. And I don't feel like it needs necessarily, you can't just have characters who are trans, right? You could just like retell a myth and have one of the characters be trans. But, you know, it's described quite a lot in this. It's not one of those where it's like, oh, and they were trans. It's, you know, the process of like kind of questioning your gender and like changing your gender and all this. I think it's meant to be more like a gender fluidity of changing into one, into another. I think Daisy Johnson just wanted to write that, maybe, but it doesn't seem to fit the story in any way, and it's kind of troubling at some parts as well, because the character is a boy who used to be a girl, but Gretel, when she finds out that this person who she knew as a child is actually trans, then changes the pronouns and starts saying she instead of he, as though she found out that she's really a girl, and that just feels like very wrong and uncomfortable. And again, there'd be nothing wrong with having that in Gretel's character, right, as something that she is, that says something about Gretel as a person, you know, this is how she thinks about people who are trans, right? But it's never questioned or interrogated or seen as something which has another dimension to it, like with the dog stealing, right? We're not allowed to question it morally, really. So that wasn't so fun. On the positive side, sometimes the style can be really nice, like that bit that I read to you. Like it's kind of ornate, but not too much. Reminded me a lot of Angela Carter as well, in the way that she talks about England and like the English countryside and stuff, but also very much fairy tale things, like it's Gretel, and we're doing lots of Greek myth, so like that, you know, using myths and legends and sort of an English setting and this ornate language did remind me of Angela Carter, although obviously Angela Carter is miles better. Angela Carter does that, but she just like has these like amazing sentences, right? Because sometimes she's too flowery, just like this writer sometimes is a bit too flowery, but there's also just these amazing thoughts and sentences and very philosophical things that come out in Carter, which you won't be finding here. Wait, I'm supposed to be saying the things I liked. So thing that I liked was the ending, like really, it kind of leans into the horror, and it got really good. Like, I don't know, I felt like kind of, wow, that's quite strong and powerful. This scene, it gets to a scene where the mother and the daughter are doing something together, which seems so primal and raw. And that scene was great, but I don't think it was necessarily worth the whole book. I do feel like it could have been a short story or something like that instead. And yeah, the emotional core, which is the mother and the daughter thing, is kind of touching, and they invent words together, which they use as their own secret language, and we hear those words throughout the book. And to my surprise, like, I kept remembering those words, like even weeks, maybe like a month after I finished this book, it just kept coming back into my head. Harpy Doodle is one of them. I kept thinking like, Harpy Doodle. That's kind of cool, right? That Daisy Johnson could have just invent some words that the mother and daughter share, and that kind of secret, bond that they have to these words means that they're imprinted in my brain as well, even though I didn't like the book. So it made me kind of reassess it a little bit, the fact that it lingers with me in that way. But yeah, honestly, there were very few positives that I could find from this, and this would have been a DNF, but I also DNF'd another book at the same time, and I did want to just like push through this, partially because I wanted to read it for so long. And I know it's kind of silly, maybe, but I do think there's something kind of rewarding about finishing a book you don't like. Hot take here, controversial booktube opinion here. I get that kind of feeling of, having conquered an opponent, of like kind of climbed a difficult mountain or something like that. If it's a book that I really struggle to read and I get through the end, whether it's a book that I like or don't like. But maybe especially if I don't like it, it's all the more rewarding. Like, I beat you. I got to the end of you. You tried to make it really hard for me by not being good, but I did it in the end, right? I obviously wouldn't want to do this for every book that I pick up, maybe very rarely, and I haven't done it in a very long time, but maybe that's why it's nice, because I haven't done it in a while. Maybe like once a year is good, maybe once every few years. This is a good way to read a book for me, but I don't know. Let me know if you do that down in the comments. Yeah, everything under I cannot recommend, unfortunately, even though it is spooky and it is in a very warm kind of climate. I should have mentioned, like, where does the spookiness come from? I suppose like it comes from the writing, comes from the style. There's also a monster, which is like the Sphinx, from the Oedipus story. Like, that has a very prominent role in this. Like, kind of, is it psychological or is it actually a real monster in the forest, in the canals? There's lots of watery, kind of freaky weeds flowing in the river, like all this rich, luxuriant, decadent, like kind of gothic descriptions, but not enough to stop this book from drowning in its flaws, at least for me. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching this weird cobbled together Frankenstein's monster of a book review with strands from the future and the past intertwined. Yeah, if you enjoyed this, or if you have thoughts, then please write them down in the comments. Thanks always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye. Hopefully next time I won't be so glowing.